thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Here's our show for tonight. This week, the Israel-Hamas war will be 1 month old. 1 month has gone by and a ceasefire is not even a remote possibility. That's what Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu says. He has vowed to press ahead in Israel's ground offensive until Hamas frees up all the hostages. Meanwhile, the health ministry in Gaza says an Israeli attack killed at least 14 Palestinians. They were fleeing from Gaza's north to its south. You see, civilians are paying for this war with their life. Stay with me on Gravitas. We'll bring you the latest. Meanwhile, India is choking. Children are wheezing. The elderly are being told they shouldn't go outside. North India is cloaked in smog. Why do we have to live this horror year after year? Sam Bankman-Fried, who once ran one of the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchanges, has been found guilty of fraud and money laundering. On the show tonight, we tell you how and why everyone got duped by Bankman-Fried's big gamble. A very important question as we slip into the weekend. How much junk food do you eat? Have you thought of the impact on the body? There's a reason it's called junk. I'll show you why. All coming up on the show tonight. It is 9 p.m. IST and 5:30 p.m. in Gaza. And this is the news that's breaking at 9. Israeli airstrikes have hit in the vicinity of the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza. The visuals are just coming in. Take a look. We also have reports coming in of another strike at the Al-Shifa hospital. We are being told that there have been numerous casualties, and this is news breaking right now. Reports say that the Al-Shifa hospital has more than 5,000 patients. There are also tens of thousands of displaced people taking shelter at this hospital. I'd like to repeat, this is the largest hospital in Gaza City and the Gaza Strip. And we are now getting reports of a drone strike at the gate of this hospital. And here's what's happening in Israel. Family and friends of hostages, along with other protesters, are releasing balloons, yellow balloons. Moments ago, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that there will be no ceasefire with Hamas. Not until all the hostages are freed. Listen in.
Our forces operate in all fronts and in all capacities. Our victory will be swift and clear. It will deliver a message to our enemies, a message that will resonate for generations.
We are bringing you the latest unfolding in the tragedy of this war. There is a very high alert at Israel's border with Lebanon, following the address of the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. The IDF says it is deployed and ready near the Lebanese border. The IDF spokesperson also sent a message to the people of Lebanon. Don't sacrifice your future for Hamas, he said. Israel claims to have also struck Hezbollah's infrastructure in Lebanon. The IDF has released footage of that strike. Here it is. In the Gaza Strip, the IDF claims to be in the face-to-face battle with Hamas operatives. Israel claims to have destroyed several Hamas infrastructure. Hamas claims it has destroyed Israeli tanks with locally made rockets and also killed at least a few Israeli soldiers as of now. Another refugee camp has been hit in Gaza. This is the Maghazi camp.
There are people missing under the rubble, people who died and are still under the rubble. And as you know, there are no cranes or bulldozers to come remove the rubble or anything. How will they enter to come remove the rubble?
Like other camps in the Strip, Maghazi too is densely populated. Israeli airstrikes have flattened an apartment building in the Burej refugee camp. There, UN schools turned shelters have also been damaged. The death toll in the Jabalia refugee camp bombing has now risen to 195. This is all that remains of the camp now.
45 عائلة 45 دار 45 منزل هيك شايف بعينك التنتين ونعم الوكيل.
The United Nations Relief and Work Agency says 23 people have been killed in Gaza in less than 23 hours. More than 12 cancer patients have died due to a hospital shutdown. Meanwhile, in Khan Yunis, a residential building was hit by Israeli airstrikes. So far, 17 bodies have been pulled out of the rubble. Eyewitnesses say that many of the wounded are women and children. The Rafah border remained open for a third day. There were limited evacuations, mostly foreign passport holders, their dependents and also some wounded Gazans. Among the many who managed to escape the war zone were the parents of Scotland's leader, Hamza Yusuf's wife. For those who remain in Gaza, life has become a nightmare. Look at this now. People have been forced to collect seawater because clean water has run out.
There is no water, there is no food for the children, there is no bread. We queue from 4 o'clock in the morning outside the bakeries to find out that there is no bread. The water was cut, the bread was cut. To whom are we supposed to go?
Take a look at this video now. The Israeli army claims to have uncovered Hamas tunnels in Gaza.
זה מרחב של פיר, שממנו יצאו חוליה של נוח'בה, 8 מלוכלכים, זה הפיר. ממש, רפאל.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken returned to West Asia today. He landed in Israel, met the Israeli President Isaac Herzog, held a meeting with Israel's war cabinet. Speaking at Tel Aviv earlier this evening, Blinken said more needs to be done to protect Palestinian lives. Here's what Blinken also added.
No country could or should tolerate the slaughter of innocents. You've heard me speak to some of the stories that Israelis have experienced on October 7th. Today, we saw additional images, additional footage collected by the Israeli government from video cameras, some the terror, others in communities that were attacked. It remains almost beyond the human capacity to process to digest.
The Hezbollah leader warned Israel against any preemptive strike in Lebanon. Protests have spread around the world. This is Jordan, where there are thousands who have come out in support of Palestine. They are carrying posters, chanting slogans.
Today we came to express the extent of the people's anger and Jordanians' anger regarding what is happening in Gaza, the terrorism, international terrorism taking place there.
These visuals are from Yemen. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Sana'a carrying Palestinian flags, chanting slogans against Israel. Posters have come up in The Hague demanding the release of Israeli child hostages. In the West Bank, Palestinians are protesting in solidarity with Gazans. Many of these protesters were seen waving the green Hamas flag and the yellow Fatah flag. And this is Istanbul. More than 100 cars ferrying pro-Palestine supporters have left for a US airbase in Adana province. The protesters plan to voice their opposition to America's support for Israel.
Injured ve yaralanan binlerce insanı tedavi ettirebilmek
atması gerekiyor. Yaralıların çıkması gerekiyor ama şu anda hala bir sahtekarlık var.
Is the Israel-Hamas war spiraling into a wider conflict? We have asked this question time and again since the conflict began. But as the war rages on, civilians are being killed, and Hezbollah is threatening to escalate the fighting, and now the possibility of a wider inferno in West Asia is looking very, very real. Because just look at what's happening on the ground. It is alarming. At Israel's northern border, there's tension on the Lebanese frontier. The situation is volatile, and Israel is on high alert.
We are in a high state of readiness in the north, in a very high state of alert, to respond to any event today and in coming days. Iran continues to pursue a negative invasive policy. It encourages proxies on its behalf. With Iranian weapons, it delivers them, exactly as it did in Ukraine, Yemen, and Iraq against American forces. It continues to do so against the state of Israel, and it is trying to move us away from the war in Gaza.
Here, Hezbollah, the Iran-backed ally of Hamas, and Israel have exchanged heavy fire. Violence spiked after Hezbollah claimed to have attacked 19 Israeli military positions in northern Israel. They attacked with drones, mortar fire, and suicide drones. Hezbollah's attacks have stoked fears that the Israel-Hamas war could become a regional one. The Israeli military said it retaliated with warplanes and helicopter gunships. But since the Israel-Hamas war began on October 7th, Hezbollah has taken steps to keep Israel's military busy on the country's border with Lebanon. And today, Hezbollah's chief has warned Israel that cross-border fighting could escalate. Its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has said that the fighting on the Lebanon-Israel border would not be limited to the scale seen until now. This marks Hezbollah's first ever admission of an attack on Israeli forces using drones. It comes just days after the group said that for the first time, It used a surface-to-air missile against an Israeli drone. In a statement, Hezbollah said its drones attacked the headquarters of the Israeli battalion in the Sheba Farms area. Remember, Israel has held the Sheba Farms area since the 1967 war, but Syria and Lebanon claim the area belongs to Lebanon. Then, the Al-Qassam Brigade said that its fighters in southern Lebanon were behind the shelling of the northern Israeli town of Kiryat Shimona. Here, 4 rockets landed in an industrial area, injuring 2 people and damaging buildings. But who are the Qassam Brigades? They are Hamas's military wing. On October 7th, around 1,200 members of the Qassam Brigades were responsible for breaking out of Gaza and making it into Israel, where they took part in the attack. Reports say there have been 20,000 and 25,000 fighters. Take a look. This is the group currently holding hostages inside Gaza as part of Hamas. They allegedly receive financial as well as tactical support from Iran. With Hamas getting support from Hezbollah, there is another group that has stepped up to help Hamas. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. They have launched multiple missile and drone attacks at Israel since the war broke out, and that includes the use of medium-range ballistic missiles. They are located more than 2,000 kilometers away, and Israel is at the very limit of even the longest range of Yemeni missiles. The Houthis have already entered the war. They have declared Israel to be an enemy. The plight of the Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire in Gaza has triggered growing outrage throughout West Asia. There is further inflaming the region, particularly as violence spills beyond the Gaza Strip, affecting West Bank, Israel's northern border, the Red Sea, Iraq and Syria. Even Israel's allies, including US forces, find themselves in the line of repeated drone and rocket fire. Since October 17th, Iranian-backed militia have reportedly launched 28 rocket and drone attacks on the US forces in Iraq and Syria. In response to the attacks on US troops, President Biden authorized an airstrike just last week. The strike targeted a weapons depot in eastern Syria. However, the rocket and drone attacks have continued. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has indicated that the US might conduct more bombing raids to deter Iran's proxies. If the US responds with greater force, it remains uncertain whether pro-Iran militias will escalate the crisis. Analysts are now drawing parallels to World War I and warning about risks involved when one party's attempt to deter an adversary could be misinterpreted as an act of aggression. One stray rocket and the entire region could blow up in conflict. According to Western media reports, the potential spread of the Gaza conflict largely depends on Iran and the militant groups that it has allegedly equipped. Western intelligence officials say that Iran may not be seeking a direct war with the US. Instead, Tehran aims to use its partners to destabilize Israel and exert pressure on the Western world. There is a growing worry that Iran's proxies might intensify their attacks to gauge the response of Israeli and US forces. Analysts say, in fact, they warn that these skirmishes could gradually spiral out of control, potentially triggering an unintended and wider conflict that is feared by one and all. Should this nightmare scenario materialize, the consequences could be devastating and unpredictable. It is truly a dangerous moment in history. And to discuss this and a lot more, joining me now on the show is Mr. John Erath. He is the Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Mr. Erath is joining us live from Washington. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mr. Erath, how do you view what's happening in West Asia? Is this now a multi-front war? Hamas, Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran. Who all are now the stakeholders in this war, in your view?
It's, of course, a very dangerous situation. And I think you have correctly cited the dangers that the war could expand beyond the current conflict in Gaza to involve other actors in the region. What we're seeing is all of the various groups in the region that are backed by and supported by Iran are now taking action against Israel. This comes with dangers that the war will expand, But at this point, I think I would be cautiously optimistic that it would not, because if you're looking at groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have nothing to gain by a full-scale war with Israel, quite a lot to lose. So I think they're going to keep a lid on the level of violence in the short term.
Right, but what does a multi-front war mean for the region? Will there be any hope for a ceasefire if multiple players are involved?
It certainly makes things more complicated and more difficult. There was hope initially for a ceasefire, but that was diminished by the actions of Hamas and later Hezbollah in further attacks against Israeli civilians. Israel's reaction has further diminished the chance for an early ceasefire. I think everybody wants there to be a ceasefire, but you have parties in the region to the conflict that seem to be set on the course of violence in the short term. So I don't know what hope there is at this point.
Right, Mr. Era, thank you so much for all your analysis, and thanks for joining us on Gravitas tonight.
You're welcome.
Now, you've been watching stories of war for 4 weeks. For almost a month now, the updates from Israel and Gaza have been dominating our social media feeds, dominating our discussions at work and at the dinner table. Our cell phones are buzzing with minute-to-minute updates. One hostage rescued, another refugee camp bombed. A lot of us are on the top of the news at this point. I'm guessing by now, some of you would have made up your mind about who the villain is in this story. For someone else, the same side could be the victim, not the villain. You see, this war is one of the most polarizing in recent times. You could be living thousands of miles away from the front line, but chances are you have an opinion on the war. It feels personal for some of you. You feel angry. And you are well within your rights to feel all of these emotions. But what does it mean today to put words to these emotions? What does it mean today to broadcast your opinion? Let me show you. In the United States, students have lost their job offers. Why? For supporting Palestine. These are Harvard and Columbia students. In New York University, law students lost their position at the school's bar association. This is after they wrote a newsletter expressing solidarity with Palestinians. In Canada, a pilot was sacked for sharing an anti-Israel photo. Mind you, this backlash is not just limited to supporters of one side. Today, no matter whom you support and what you say, there will likely be a cost to speaking up. Your pro-Israel posts on social media could be met with abusive graphic comments. Do you not care for the mother who lost her child to an Israeli airstrike? You will be asked this if you support Israel. When Kylie Jenner posted a photo of Israel's flag with the caption, "We stand with the people of Israel," she was flooded with derogatory messages on social media. So what should you do? Keep your opinion to yourself? What then are all these social media platforms for, if not for sharing your views, expressing yourself? Ever since the war began, there has been a rise in anti-Semitic activities. There has also been a rise in attack on Arabs. In the United States, a 6-year-old boy was stabbed by his landlord. The child's mother told the police that the landlord yelled, "You Muslims must die." In Los Angeles, a man was heard yelling, "Free Palestine, kill Jews." A Fox News anchor thought he could go on air and spread hate. Jesse Waters told his audience, and I'm quoting, "If you are an Arab American in this country and you rip down posters of Jewish hostages, American hostages, no, someone is going to get punched in the face." This is a news anchor we're talking about. Why would you say something like that? Free speech is one thing, spreading hate quite another. Today, every word we say could take an inflammatory turn. With people openly calling for blood, you never know what triggers them. So what should you do? Say nothing? I would say speak and share your views by all means, but do that responsibly. Firstly, educate yourself. Don't mindlessly like and repost. Keep in mind the sentiments of those suffering. Some of their peers, some of their family members could be on your social media. Be kind to their sensitivities. Above all, keep in mind that you don't need to pick a side in this war. It is by no means a sign of intellect, being woke or aware. It is okay to not have an opinion. Let me repeat that. Let's normalize not having an opinion in times like these. Since we're talking about sharing opinion, where do you do it? In person or on WhatsApp? Well, WhatsApp is at the heart of this next story. The popular messaging platform has landed itself in a fresh bout of trouble. Multiple media reports have stated that WhatsApp's AI is showing inappropriate stickers when prompted with the word Palestine. This is alarming. A WhatsApp feature that uses artificial intelligence to generate images in response to user searches has been found to produce these inappropriate results. When prompted with terms like Palestinian, Palestine, or Muslim boy Palestinian, the search feature is producing pictures of guns or boys with guns. Searches for terms like Muslim Palestine yielded images of women in hijab engaged in different activities such as reading or holding flowers. However, searches for Muslim boy Palestinian produce images of children, including one boy holding what appeared to be an AK-47 gun and wearing a Muslim hat called a kufi or takia. In contrast, searches for Israeli boy returned images of children engaging in innocent play, playing soccer or even reading. Naturally, this has raised concerns. Those who are supporting Palestine have called out the bias. There's more. Searches for terms like Israel or Israeli army return non-violent results such as the Israeli flag, people dancing, cartoon illustrations of soldiers smiling or praying. Meanwhile, a search for Hamas resulted in an error message. Interestingly, Meta, the parent company of WhatsApp, has been made aware of this problem by its own employees, who have reported and escalated the matter internally. This is not the first time that Meta has come under fire for how its platforms handle pro-Palestinian content. Meta was recently accused of shadow banning pro-Palestine content on its platforms Facebook and Instagram. How are you feeling today? If you're watching me from India, probably not good. India is choking to death. The annual tragedy is underway, a slow death with each breath. If you woke up in the Indian capital this morning, you probably woke up with a splitting headache, a constant cough, red eyes. You look outside your window and what you see is doom. A thick layer of toxic smog covers the capital. There was no visibility on roads this morning. The AQI, Air Quality Index, was at 611. Let me put that into perspective. An AQI reading of 0 to 50 is considered good. But anywhere between 400 to 500 is unhealthy. And now, in India, we're talking AQI numbers of 600 and above, and that too in the Indian capital. Delhi air right now is hazardous for you. It's dangerous. Year on year, at the same time, we curse poor air quality. We're told to wear masks. Schools are moved online. People fall sick. Some are nebulized. In fact, in October this year, Delhi air quality was the worst since 2020. Why does the air turn toxic come November every year? Because of the burning of crop stubble in the Indian states of Punjab and Haryana. Apart from that, industrial emissions, exhaust fumes from cars, dust from construction sites, all this adds to the toxic mix which we're inhaling right now. This is Delhi, the Indian capital. Do you recognize it? This is Noida in Uttar Pradesh, another region in North India. It has several offices, MNCs, malls, high-rises. Can you see any of them? Do you have children? How are they feeling? Let me tell you about mine tonight. My son is at home with red eyes and an itchy throat. His school has moved online because most schools in North India have been ordered shut for 2 days. My daughter is 7 months old. This is her first brush with Delhi pollution, an annual affair for most of us. She too is coughing. If you also have children, your fears are the same as mine. Why do I say that? Because such toxic air is dangerous for children. One study finds a clear link between PM 2.5 pollutants and low birth weight. It also says children exposed to such air run the risk of developing anemia, respiratory infections, all under the age of 5. It can also lead to a decrease in lung growth. Just imagine that. I don't even have to tell you about the utter agony of nebulizing a baby who is struggling to breathe in this toxic air. It's happening more often than you think. And it's not just Delhi or North India. India's financial capital, Mumbai, is also battling a similar crisis. This is Mumbai. There's smog. Hospitals have patients walking in. This includes a lot of kids. They're wheezing, vomiting. They have a blocked nose and labored breathing, runny nose, fever. In fact, the local body says it has planned to install a smog tower. How effective that will be, we don't know. India is choking to death. Speak to any pulmonologist and she will tell you. When the air quality is poor, it is the vulnerable who are affected the most. Children, the elderly, those with comorbidities, those with chronic respiratory disease, and even those with a heart condition. The pollutants can damage your eye health. So if your eyes are watery, itchy, red, you're not alone today. Here's what the people of Delhi are saying.
से सांस लेने में प्रॉब्लम होती है, आंख से जलन होता है, दम घुटता है, इतनी प्रदूषण है, धूप छाया खिला हुआ है और बिल्कुल लगता है कि मतलब अंधकार सा भेल है. देखते हैं चारों तरफ कितना धुंध है.
हमारा नोज का एरिया है, वहाँ पे काफी अजीब सी इचिंग हो रही है, प्लस ब्रीदिंग में प्रॉब्लम है और आईज में भी काफी ज्यादा परेशानी हो रही है.
लाल हो जाते हैं और ऐसे अजीब सा लगता है, जैसे कभी कभार लगता है कि सर्वर चक्कर सा आ रहा है.
So what can you do? How do you cope? I can tell you what experts say. Wear a mask. More specifically, an N95 mask. It can help you avoid viruses and bacteria to a certain extent. Invest in a good air purifier. Try and put one in every room where you spend your time, especially around children and senior citizens. Put the air purifier on a raised surface. It will catch the PM 2.5 particles instead of the dust off your floor. And I know this one is hard, even impossible for some, but try and stay indoors as much as possible. Children and the elderly at least should not be outdoors no matter what. Their lungs simply are not equipped to handle this kind of air. I bring you this story tonight even as I cough and sneeze myself. This is a story not about climate. This is not a story about health. This is also not a story about AQI. It's a story about us, all of us, a story that we have to live year after year. Our next story is about China's territorial ambitions in Central Asia. You see, China is expanding its presence in this region through billion-dollar agreements. Recently, Kazakhstan and China inked deals worth $16.54 billion. It primarily focused on enhancing transport routes and boosting trade turnover. Reports suggest that discussions even extended into Xinjiang. China's growing influence and footprint in Central Asia is raising concerns among global stakeholders. After all, Beijing's ambitions here have far-reaching implications for regional stability, human rights, and of course the dynamics of regional security. Let's get into the details now. According to Kazakhstan's presidential press service, during President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's visit to China in mid-October, officials signed a substantial number of documents, totaling at least 30. They inked a range of agreements such as investments, trade, technology transfers, and the opening of credit lines, among others. However, the most noteworthy deal, the agreement that commands our attention, is the enhancement of the Trans-Caspian international transport route capacity, increasing it 5-fold. This development is significant, given that approximately 85% of all land transit traffic from China to Europe passes through Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has allocated a substantial $35 billion for highway development, over the next 15 years. The country plans to construct an additional 1,300 kilometers of new railway tracks within the 3 years. According to Kazakhstan's Ministry of National Economy, the Kazakh-Chinese trade turnover for January to August this year was a whopping $19 billion. That's a 23% surge compared to the same period last year, when it was $15.5 billion. But here's the twist. Most of this growth is a one-way street. Exports from Kazakhstan to China amounted to $9 billion, a modest rise of 2.1%. But imports into Kazakhstan from China, they hit $10 billion. Now that's a 49.5% year-on-year rise. To confuse matters, Jiang Wei, the Consul General of China in Almaty, reportedly completed different trade figures. According to Chinese statistics, for the same 8-month period, he pegged bilateral trade at $25.23 billion. So what's going on here? What explains this discrepancy? Some economic observers are suggesting smuggling and corruption might be the culprits. But there's more. The Belt and Road Initiative related action in Beijing this mid-October. The Kazakh president jet-setted to China's westernmost Xinjiang province. He met with Ma Xingrui, the regional Communist Party boss. The discussions? Expanding trade and developing tourism. Now you might be thinking, why is that a big deal? Well, Xinjiang is ground zero for China's controversial crackdown on its Muslim minority groups, including ethnic Kazakhs. This province, which borders Kazakhstan, played a significant role in accounting for over 40% of China's overall trade with Kazakhstan, and that is just in the first half of this year. Meanwhile, Uzbekistan has seen its investment from China skyrocket 5-fold. That's not all. Both nations are deep in discussions about supercharging sectors like metallurgy, energy, cutting-edge communication technology. We're not done yet. Turkmenistan is joining forces with China in what they call technical and economic cooperation. Not much is known regarding the contents of their deal, but there are interesting talks about expanding the China-Central Asia gas pipeline. So basically, a whole bunch of deals have been signed between Central Asian states and China. It all went down on the sidelines of last week's Grand Beijing Jamboree, celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. These big deals merit our attention. Let's connect the dots. The dots of China's expanding trade web in Central Asia. It's all about the big picture here. In a nutshell, China has been busy sealing deals left and right, and it's all part of a bigger plan. The numbers speak for themselves. The balance of trade with Central Asia is clearly leaning in favor of China. In the first half of this year, they exported a jaw-dropping $26.4 billion worth of goods and services to Central Asia. On the flip side, they imported $13.5 billion, creating quite the trade gap. What's the big takeaway? Central Asia is witnessing a surge in China's influence and trade dominance. While Beijing maintains a relatively light military presence in the region, its economic footprint in Central Asia has grown immensely in recent years. And this is all part of the Belt section of China's Belt and Road, which involves overland routes. They will connect China to Europe via Central Asia. The staggering numbers speak for themselves. More than 100 BRI projects have been funded in Central Asia, and the region is becoming synonymous with Chinese projects. This level of financial clout is something that the EU can hardly hope to match in a region that shares a direct border with China. This is why China's rising influence in Central Asia is gaining attention. While Russia has been dominant here, China now is making significant inroads with a notable rise in arms supply and the establishment of military bases. What does all this mean for India? Well, India has concerns about China's expanding influence in the region, rightfully so, particularly because of the Belt and Road Initiative. China's economic initiatives often lead to dependencies. Their debt-trapped approach has raised alarm. But India is also actively expanding cooperation in the region to ensure stability and connectivity. The Central Asian countries also turn to India as a counterbalance to China. Let's move on now. Rishi Sunak commended this week's Artificial Intelligence Summit as a diplomatic breakthrough in the first international initiative to deal with the fast-emerging technology. The UK, the US, EU, Australia and China have all agreed that AI poses a potentially catastrophic risk to humanity. The summit closed with a conversation between Sunak and none other than Elon Musk. Take a look.
Like-minded governments and AI companies have today reached a landmark agreement.
British Prime Minister.
The late Stephen Hawking once said, AI is likely to be the best or worst thing to happen to humanity. If we can sustain the collaboration that we have fostered over these last 2 days, I profoundly believe that we can make it the best. Because safely harnessing this technology could eclipse anything we have ever known.
The list of countries that had signed up to the safety testing collaboration did not include China, whose representatives were not included in the second day of talks. But the day prior, Sunak secured China's backing of the Bletchley Declaration, another international effort to manage the risks of AI.
It wasn't an easy decision for you to invite China, and indeed lots of people criticized me for it, but I think it was the right long-term decision, because any serious conversation about AI safety has to engage the leading AI nations.
Sunak welcomed U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris to the second day of the AI summit, as well as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. A conversation between Sunak and Elon Musk on the tech billionaire's X platform was to mark the final words on AI. According to two sources at the summit, Musk told fellow attendees on Wednesday that governments should not rush to roll out AI legislation.
"31-year-old Sam Bankman-Fried wanted to be a crypto wizard. For a while, he did fulfill his ambition. He was one of the youngest billionaires in the world, aided by his crypto exchange FTX. FTX grew to be one of the biggest crypto exchange platforms in the world, perhaps overshadowed only by Binance. But the quest for exponential growth also gave way for unchecked greed. And that was the beginning of the MIT-educated Bankman-Fried's downfall, which has now culminated in his conviction for fraud. The FTX saga is one for the ages. It all began as a possible accounting oversight. But beneath that was a huge trail of financial irregularities, one that ultimately led to Bankman-Fried's guilty verdict. Authorities discovered that customer funds went to accounts controlled by Alameda Research, a company also owned by Bankman-Fried, and not to FTX. Effectively, FTX ran as a cover for Alameda Research, which used funds from FTX. Just like how you and I withdraw money from our bank accounts, Bankman-Fried used FTX funds to buy personal luxury items, finance elaborate advertising campaigns, and make political donations. He continues to defend the move as valid. But in the absence of a clear balance sheet which shows the assets and liabilities, FTX's shady transactions never came under the spotlight. That was until a crypto media platform in October last year unearthed a maze of financial irregularity. The financial transactions linking FTX and Alameda Research. Bankman-Fried's time was up. Between November 2nd and November 12th last year, millions of users began to withdraw their funds from FTX as panic gripped investors. This triggered a collapse as FTX began facing a liquidity crunch. When it could not pay for an $8 billion gap, FTX filed for bankruptcy. Going bankrupt is one thing, but defrauding customers of their money is nothing but a crime. The law has finally caught up with him. He faces the possibility of 115 years in prison. After the verdict, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said, and I quote, "Sam Bankman-Fried perpetrated one of the biggest financial frauds in American history. This kind of fraud, this kind of corruption is as old as time. We have no patience for it." But Bankman-Fried is just a symptom of a deeper malaise in the crypto world. In the absence of any regulation, the crypto world is a wild, wild west, where people like Bankman-Fried entice the gullible who are looking to make some quick bucks. The FTX saga is another reminder that assets without any underlying guarantee or overseeing authority are fraught with danger. Financial experts have warned that there is a considerable degree of speculation and risk involved in trading crypto assets. The FTX collapse took place at a time when the world began realizing the need for regulating assets like crypto. The year-long saga has given the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission the reason to think of regulators for the crypto world. While banks can go bust and come under regulatory protection, crypto exchanges do not have that luxury. This puts financial stakes of millions at risk. Yes, cryptos have given massive returns but are highly vulnerable to fluctuation. When FTX went bust last year, the chain reaction took with it other crypto firms like Genesis. Genesis filed for bankruptcy in January this year after it failed to repay $3.4 billion that it owed to creditors. FTX-like frauds do little to instill confidence but fuel further instability in the crypto world. So what's the big thing, the one big thing that Sam Bankman-Fried's downfall tells us? Well, making some quick bucks can quickly turn into a quicksand for many. Junk food. It's really junk, but you don't need me to tell you that, or so I hope. So let me tell you something else. Junk food-induced obesity, which for the longest time was considered a Western problem, is slowly becoming an Indian reality. Correct me if I'm wrong. Today, children in India want to celebrate their birthday at a McDonald's. Adults want date nights at KFC. Tacos are dominating office parties. Pizzas are ordered every time friends get together. Cold cuts have become a household staple. We prefer carrying Dunkin' Donuts when visiting our families instead of traditional sweets. It is a big victory for American soft power. But where do you think that leaves India's health? I'll answer that. In an ICU. According to India's Portion Tracker, 43 lakh children in India are obese or overweight. In other words, more than 4 million children in India are obese or overweight. And why do you think that is? Take a peek at your kitchen shelves right now. Do you see how many packaged products are there? Most of them are ultra-processed. They are high in sugar, salt and fat. In other words, they are junk. Let's recap some basics first. What is junk food? What qualifies as junk food? Food that is high in calorie, low in nutrients. Food that is high in salt and sugar but low in fiber. Food that is high in fat but low in vitamins, low in minerals. Your fried chicken, for example, it is junk. And so are store-bought burgers, pizzas, packet chips, biscuits, sodas, cold cuts, bacon, ready-to-eat meals, all kinds, frozen food. How do you think these food items impact our health? They contribute to obesity, lead to diabetes, heart disease. India is already the world's diabetes capital, and the pack of potato chips in your office cabinet is only exacerbating the problem. Western countries are slowly coming to terms with this bitter reality. People are becoming more conscious. They are addressing obesity, even if it means leaning on obesity drugs. Authorities are implementing curbs on advertisements. Spain, for example, has banned junk food ads targeting children. Ads promoting chocolates, cookies, pastries, energy drinks, packet juice, ice cream, and other junk food has been banned from TV or websites with content for children. Belgium prohibits in-school marketing of junk food. So does Portugal and Canada's Quebec province. Some lawmakers in Australia also are pushing to ban junk food ads on TV and radio between 6 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. Australia already has a health star rating. So does New Zealand. This encourages people to make healthier choices. And people are slowly leaning towards healthier food. This is especially true for those for whom money isn't a problem. They are spending a couple of extra dollars on a salad instead of snacking on a burger. They are choosing balanced meals instead of a hot dog from a fast food cart. But what the West is dumping, there is a growing allure of foreign brands. Sugary cereals are now in every kitchen. They have replaced traditional Indian breakfasts, the likes of poha and upma. Instant noodles have become a part of our diet. So have packet chips. In fact, according to a Bloomberg report, the sales of snacks and soft drinks in India have tripled over the past decade. It exceeded $30 billion last year. Here's what else is happening. With developed countries increasingly regulating junk food, the industry is now actively looking for its next victim. And topping the shortlist is India. It has the world's largest population, little awareness, lax regulation. Today, India's middle class has enough disposable income. They can afford to stock up their fridge with imported sauces. So it is not surprising that every couple of months a new fast food brand is opening up. Imported junk food is more readily available than ever before. They may look like a treat to the eyes when shopping, but they are not your gut's best friend. The question is, what should India do? To start with, regulate ads. A 2005 study found a link between junk food ads to children and the risk of obesity among them. Another very interesting study was carried out back in 1990, and this was in Montreal. It found that the English-speaking families who had exposed their kids to ads on American TV channels had more cereals in their homes when compared to French-speaking families who did not watch American stations. You know what most junk food companies do? They try to lure parents by promising unproven health benefits. For example, they sell sugar in the guise of a health drink. Strategy number 2, junk food companies lure children by roping in a popular celebrity as a brand ambassador. So cracking down on misleading ads will be a start. Here's what else will work. 1. Regulate misleading food packaging. A box of sugary cereals should not be allowed to declare itself as healthy. 2. Awareness. It starts at home and preschool. 3. Choices. When you go out for lunch this weekend, order a balanced meal instead of a fried item. When you call your friends over, or even your family for dinner, on Diwali in fact, serve healthy snacks instead of frozen ones. The final Beatles recording is here, titled Now and Then. The almost impossible to believe track is 4 minutes and 8 seconds of the first and only original Beatles track of the 21st century. Listen in.
When we lost John, we knew that it was really over.
I was talking to Yoko and she said, I think I've got a tape of John.
Paul called me up and said he'd like to work on Now and Then.
And with that, it's a wrap on Gravitas for tonight. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma. Have a nice weekend ahead.